What the hell's going on with Baker Mayfield as you and I are sitting right now? What is happening in that stalemate?
I think it just comes down to money. At this point, I think as much bluster as there is back and forth, this is going to really come down to how much money the Browns are willing to take on. And, I think this is sort of why you're seeing shifting attitudes when it comes to the fifth-year option, because of the new CBA, those are fully guaranteed now, which, of course, gives the player more control, where the team had all the control. Barring some sort of injury, the team would have all the control before. And so, I think that the Browns may have been able to find a suitor for Baker Mayfield if there were a team out there willing to at least roll the dice on him the way the Panthers rolled the dice on Sam Darnold last year. But that team doesn't exist right now. And so, this goes one of two ways. Either the Browns move to pick up a bigger portion of Baker Mayfield's salary, or they hold him on the roster and they hope that there's an injury somewhere else.
Oh boy,
that creates some level of desperation for another team, where that team will be willing to take on the $18.858 billion. So
oh boy,
that's
man.
really what this comes down to.
Oh boy, because all right, there's a couple things here. Let's start here. Haven't we reached the part of this situation though, where everybody thinks the Browns are going to have to cut him anyway? So why would they even entertain an idea of engaging them in trade talks and paying money for Baker Mayfield that they feel they're going to have to pay? Aren't we at that point of this conversation?
Here's the thing. I don't think Baker. I think we've maybe gone a little too far as what Baker's value is, right? I think teams view him as a starting quarterback. And I think we'd probably all look at him a little bit differently if he weren't the first overall pick. If he had been a second or a third round pick in 2018, which looking back, is probably what he should have been. I think we would probably all view him as a relative success story. He won a playoff game in Cleveland, which a quarterback hadn't done in a long, long time. And he's plenty competent. Nobody's going to trade for him thinking he's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the league. But, he's somewhere between 20 and 32 probably. And again, the issue now is there's not an open seat for him. And, if they cut him, here's the thing, Rich. If they cut him, then some other team can sign him at the minimum, and it won't make any difference to him because of the way the offsets work, right? So he can go sign for the minimum wherever he wants. And at that point, the Browns lose control of the situation, and they could be making somebody else, maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers, stronger by making Baker Mayfield available to them. So I think that's sort of the part of the part of it that's a little tricky here is that maybe you can get somebody to take on $5 million or $8 million of the salary and bring him in. Versus, if you cut him, then there's no motivation for Baker or another team to do a deal worth anything more than the minimum, because the amount Baker's going to get is going to be the same no matter where he goes. In that scenario, the Browns won't be able to dictate his location.
So let's get into the where then. Let's just say, hypothetically, Albert Breer, Baker Mayfield gets released just today. Let's just say today, in the midst of this conversation or after we hang up with you, let's just wave a wand and say that happens. Who would raise their hand for him? Who would say, well, I'll take him for that price and open up?
I honestly think Seattle would look at it. Now, I don't think that they wanted to fork over draft capital for him and pay him $18 million, but under the right circumstance, I think Pete Carroll wants to create a quarterback competition there. And you look at their draft, and they didn't come away with one, and so, I think Seattle's a place where if you look at how they got Russell Wilson all those years ago, right? It's easy for all of us to sit here and say, well, they took a big swing on a third-round pick, and they nailed that, But the truth is, and I think you and I have talked about this before, they got to Russell Wilson by continually throwing darts. And they signed Matt Flynn. They traded for Charlie Whitehurst. They brought back Matt Hasselbeck for that first year. They signed Travaris Jackson. And I just, you look at where Seattle is, and they're sort of back where they were before. And, I think that this would be a worthwhile dart to throw. A guy who was a former first overall pick, who has as much starting experience. You throw him in a competition with Drew Lock. and you see what happens. So they still make the most sense. The Panthers are going to be interesting because I think from a reps perspective, they might have an interest in Baker or Jimmy Garoppolo, but they might want to see their other guys first in the spring. I know, and this is going to sound crazy, there are some things that their new offensive coordinator, Ben McAdoo, really likes about Sam Darnold, and he thinks that maybe he can get more out of him. So, getting the chance to see that on the practice field in May and June may have some value to him. And then, obviously getting a look at what they have in their third-round pick in Matt Corral, that I think they want to gather some information on where Matt Corral is over the next 6 or 7 weeks. So, if he was cut, I think those are the two teams that everybody would be looking at. I think both those teams make sense for different reasons. I think if you look at where the Panthers are right now, they may be in more of a position to sort of just start gathering information on the guys they've got on the roster right now. And, I think that they could be in the hunt for somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo, too, if, that information leads them into a not great place when they get to the middle of June.
And, the New Yorker and me, Albert Breer, is kind of scoffing that Baker Mayfield might not wind up in Seattle because they like Geno Smith better, and he might not wind up in Carolina because Ben McAdoo likes Sam Darnold better. I mean,
it all comes back.
I'm kind of like, wow, that would be kind of wild. That would be kind of wild. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.